to the 2024 Stanley Cup odds. The Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stuart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I will take a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
I will say this. Beal is not going anywhere because I don't think he has enough value. If Phoenix gets knocked out in the first round, especially if this is like a sweep or a 4-1 series win for Minnesota, you will see Kevin Durant and or Devin Booker being traded.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. The Early Line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell, coast to coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live, prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Hello and welcome to a Tuesday live right here on the Early Line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination and consume everything all across the grid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. We are here together for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern time to go all around the sports landscape. It is playoff time in the world of sports around the association. A triple header of games last night in NBA postseason action. 2 of the 3 games, a series clinching potential that came to fruition. We'll look around the NBA, go on the ice as well in the National Hockey League, Major League Baseball, the Daily Diamond Dash, and continue our takeaways from the weekend that was out in Detroit for the 2024 NFL Draft.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff all the way around. It's just a shame then we get to the playoffs, we get so excited, and we watch all of these playoff games like a triple header last night, but realizing 2 of those series are now over. Thunder Pelicans, gone. Lakers Nuggets, gone. And on to the next rounds we go, which we will enjoy those games, but they get few and far between. That's why we love round number 1, but great stuff all the way across the board. 3 hours to hit all of these topics. There's enough time today. We'll do it.
3 of the 4 teams that will qualify for the Western Conference semifinals in the NBA are already there. So we go last night to where things ended in Denver. Game number 5 between the Nuggets and the Lakers after LA snapped an 11-game losing skid to the Nugs in game number 4 over the weekend in Los Angeles. But that was the end of it. Denver advances back to the Western Conference semifinals for a second consecutive season with a 108-106 victory over the Lakers. And once again, it was the Jamal Murray game-winning dagger at the buzzer in game number 2, just about 4 seconds prior to the buzzer here in game number 5. Regardless, it was the game-winning shot. The Nuggets win 108-106. LA does cover, though, as a 6-point road underdog.
Yeah, shout out LeBron James, too, also. We don't know what the future is going to be for him, but we'll certainly talk about that later. 30 points, 11 assists, and 9 rebounds in an elimination game. Certainly came to play. They're just not as good as the Denver Nuggets. As you take a look at that Nuggets starting lineup, 26 out of Porter Jr., Nikola Jokic, 25, 20, and 9. So a couple guys that are just missing triple-doubles. And then you get Jamal Murray going, I don't know if I'm going to play in this game, but if I do, let me drop 32 points, which includes another dagger at the end of the game. You look at the series price here, right? 5 games. It's like, oh, that was a gentleman's sweep. It was 50. No, it wasn't. If you watch all of those games, this was a tightly contested series, but that's what championship teams do, like the Denver Nuggets, win in the clutch, and they did that as well last night, Ben.
DRS, it's such a good point. Jamal Murray dealing with a strained calf injury, came into the facilities yesterday in Denver, and they told him, hey, we don't think you should play in game number 5. He lobbied to play, and he was the difference. A game-high 32 points in his second game-winning bucket in the final 5 seconds. The first time we have seen that in the past 25 years, that a player has hit 2 game-winning shots in the final 5 ticks in a single NBA playoff series. Jamal Murray is clutch. So the Nuggets continue their title defense, but maybe the bigger story that we'll react to and break down in just a few moments is what happens in Los Angeles for LeBron James's future as a Laker and maybe in the NBA. Party like it's 2016 in Oklahoma City. The Thunder win their first playoff series since 2016 as an organization, dismantling the New Orleans Pelicans once again. Really a tight game throughout, but after the Pels lost in a tight game number 1, they really didn't show a ton of effort from that point on. OKC pulls off the sweep, 97-89. The victory last night in the Big Easy. 4 games, 4 wins for Oklahoma City.
Yeah, it seemed easy, too, right? When we talked about that game number 1, just getting that first win under your belt. And then you see the Thunder, who, again, first playoff series win since 2016, winning each game where you say, Lowett, let's get that confidence, Ben. Game number 2 at home, wipe them off the court. Now, how are we going to figure going on the road here and winning a game 3, which they did? And then saying, okay, are we mature enough to close out a game number 4? And they did that as well. Love what I see out of the Thunder here moving forward. Every single series, every single time they win, Ben, much, much more confidence here that maybe they can win the NBA championship.
The Thunder cover as a 4.5-point road favorite. Now 38-27 against the number, booked as the favored side throughout the entirety of this NBA campaign. Game number 2 for Miami, they hit a playoff franchise record 23 threes. That's probably going to be their only win in the Eastern Conference opening round of the postseason against the conference's top team, the Boston Celtics. The Celtics last night on the road in South Beach, another double-digit victory, booked as a double-digit favorite. Boston covers as a 10.5-point favorite, winning by 14. The Derek White game, a game-high 38 points. He banged in 8 triples from deep.
That's what you need here. Different guys stepping up on different nights. You only got 20 points there out of Jason Tatum, 17 points out of Brown on the road, and he came away with a double-digit victory, which has been pointed out, also covering the spread. And you think back to the Miami Heat. Yes, they did get game number 2, but I got back to this point. If you need to do historic things just to win a basketball game in the playoffs, you're probably not going to do that all that often. This will be a 5-game series, no doubt about it. Boston showed up in Miami to put that fire out on the Heat and said, look, you might have gotten game number 2. You got our attention. Yeah. Now it's time to go home.
But with some good, there is a little bit of bad. Kristaps Porzingis did exit game number 4 early with what Boston is calling a calf injury. Calf injuries have been a big part of this NBA postseason. Now to the ice, the Stanley Cup playoff run, a doubleheader of action in the Sunshine State showdown between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning. Florida wins in game number 5. Back on home ice in Sunrise, the Panthers win this opening round set against Tampa in 5 games, 6-1. And Donnie, out in the Western Conference between the Stars and the Golden Knights, nobody wants to win at home. Dallas loses both of its first 2 games at home. The Vegas Golden Knights winning on the road. The Stars return the favor in the 2 games in Vegas. Last night, a 4-2 victory in Sin City in game number 4.
Doesn't really surprise. You take a look at the regular season with the Stars on the road, Ben, 26-10 overall. They're used to handling their business, but also the Golden Knights have a very good home ice advantage over the past couple years, and you figure if they just came home and got a split, this series was probably de facto over. Shout out the Stars for evening this series up. It's a best of three now going back to Dallas to see if they can finally handle home ice advantage.
Will somebody win at home? That is the question. Big series in Major League Baseball beginning yesterday for the midweek set in the American League East, the divisional duel. The Baltimore Orioles blanked the Yankees inside Camden. 2-0 to win for the O's. Gunnar Henderson led off the game for Baltimore in the home half of the first with his 10th home run already this season. The youngest player in MLB history, in the entire history of Major League Baseball, to hit 10 home runs prior to May 1st.
Yeah, we take a look and say to ourselves, all right, how is this going to figure its way out here in the Baltimore Orioles going up against the New York Yankees in the East? Well, yesterday was a plus 175 price on the Baltimore Orioles to win the Eastern Division here. And I say to myself, you know what? That's the price I'm going to take here. Nice win for the Orioles yesterday. Home ice advantage, home field advantage. Baltimore handled that yesterday. Yes, they did.
Contract news now in the National Football League following the NFL draft. Travis Kelce is getting paid a 2-year, $34.25 million extension with KC. Travis Kelce now on an annual average basis becomes the highest paid tight end in the NFL, and probably rightfully so.
Yeah, and shout out to people saying, like, why would he take that much money? You know, he's with Taylor Swift. He's probably going to marry her. The same way Tom Brady took less money because he has Gisele Bündchen and they can have so much more money. Why don't you look at the salary cap? That's not the way the NFL works. And also keep in mind, typically in the NFL, you're paid for future performance, not past performance like Major League Baseball. You had to pay Travis Kelce. This guy is instrumental in you holding up those Lombardi trophies here. Well-deserved pay, even if he doesn't live up to the hype of the past couple years. That's his money. He earned it, and he should get paid.
Reports out of college athletics that the NCAA is now exploring a revenue-sharing model with athletes because of an ongoing court case that will be decided in January of 2025. We wait with bated breath. Back to the NBA playoffs up next.
To the 2024 Stanley Cup odds, the Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stuart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I will take a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
DraftKings making a progressive move, I think, that most other companies are also going to do or have done in the past. Adding someone from the government or someone you would say in legislation to become their responsible gaming leader here. And in this case, her name is Lori Kalani.
And it'll be interesting to see if other companies try to follow suit in terms of hiring former lobbyists to head responsible gaming.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
A triple header of NBA playoff action last night. And in 2 of the 3 games that we saw in 2 of the 3 series clinching potentials that came to fruition. First, the reigning NBA champions back in Denver. The Nuggets advanced to the second round of the NBA postseason, taking care of business against the LA Lakers once again. Not a sweep like last year in the Western Conference Finals, but the gentleman's sweep. After the Lakers won in game number 4 to send this back to game number 5 in the Mile High City, Jamal Murray does to the Lakers what he has done now twice in this series, a game-winning shot in the final 5 seconds of regulation. The true buzzer beater as time expired in game number 2. Last night with just about 4 seconds left, Jamal Murray delivers the dagger to the Lakers season and this series. 106, the victory for Denver. The title defense rolls on into the second round. The Lakers do cover, however, DRS, as a 6-point underdog. And as we'll discuss in just a moment, in all 5 games in this set, the Lakers had the lead at the break to only lose 4 of 5 by the time we got to the end of 48 minutes.
Adjustments were made at the breaks. Adjustments were made in the second. Coach Malone had that team on point. But also, let's remind ourselves, we're not surprised by the Denver Nuggets anymore. This is what they do. This is why we love this basketball team and say, yeah, they're probably on a collision course to face the Boston Celtics in the NBA Finals, even though how deep and how talented the Western Conference actually is. And you just look at the steady performers. Like, is there ever a night, though, Ben, to be honest? Like, I know LeBron James steps up, and he did last night. It just wasn't enough. Anthony Davis was okay. But you take a look at Nikola Jokic. Every time you're like, ooh, this is a big game. Does he ever come up small? Like, does Jokic ever finish with 9.7 rebounds, 3 assists, and foul out? No. Like in a closeout situation, 12 of 21 from the floor, 41 minutes played, 25 points, 20 rebounds, and 9 assists to go along with his +7. Every time you need him to step up, and he does. And if you're taking a look at some of those pantheon players or performances, we're getting that from Jamal Murray on a night-to-night basis now in the biggest moments. He single-handedly felt like he put away the Los Angeles Lakers, where if he doesn't make those shots, who knows where this series is, and maybe the Lakers even lead this series at this point. So the focus there on one of the best 1-2 punches we've seen over the past couple of years, now you can include, it's not just, hey, Nikola Jokic, the MVP, is the only player on that basketball team. Murray steps up routinely and also talking about it entering into this game. Calf injuries scare everybody. See Giannis, he's not around here. Porzingis, the Boston Celtics scared that he might miss extended periods of time. So anytime you say, hey, Jamal Murray's going to come to the arena, we have a decided lead here. Hey, kid, sit this one out. Let's not injure it. No, I'll play. And it wasn't like, Ben, I'll give you 21 minutes tonight because that's all I can do. He played 41 minutes last night and shot 28 times on a bum calf there and hit the game winner once again. The Denver Nuggets, man, they just know how to win.
Absolutely so. Game high 32 points out of Jamal Murray. And as we shared at the top, he is the first player in the last 25 NBA seasons to hit 2 game-winning shots in the final 5 seconds of a single postseason series. He's only the 4th player in the last 2.5 decades to do it multiple times in a single playoff run the entirety of the postseason. And he hands the Lakers 2 daggers. This one to end the season in Los Angeles. Uncharacteristic night, perhaps, for Nikola Jokic. He had 7 turnovers. You don't often see that out of the Joker. And again, Donnie, the story of this series, the Lakers having a lead at the half in all 5 games to only lose outright 4 of the 5. Denver only covered in game 1 and in game 3. And in game 3, they were a slight road underdog in the first time that we changed venue in Los Angeles. Last night was the first time, despite leading at the break, the Lake Show did not have a double-digit lead in any of the 5 games in this series. Something did not work in LA. We'll talk about the fallout and what it means in Los Angeles moving forward later in this hour. But we have to discuss a little bit of the future of LeBron James. 30 points, 11 dimes, 9 boards last night. Year 21. Year number 21 comes to a close for LeBron James. When asked about his future in LA, in the NBA last night after the loss, he said, I'm not going to answer that. And he left it at that. It will be a tumultuous and uncertain offseason in Los Angeles and maybe the entirety of the association, especially with LeBron's kid, Bronny James, having entered the NBA draft but still retaining his college eligibility.
Yeah, and also, you take a look at where LeBron James wants to go. I don't know if it's in his best interest to move on from the Lakers because it is LA. There's a lot of business ventures out there. He's still playing well. And where is he going to go? Is he just going to glom on and say, you know what? I'm going to opt out of my contract. Quite frankly, I don't even know his contract situation. Let's just say he has an opt-out like he typically puts in on a year-to-year basis. And he goes, I just want to move on and play for the vet minimum in Golden State. Like, we talk about those legacy type of games here. And yes, you do want to win championships. But LeBron James should just say, you know what? I've already won one in Los Angeles. I'm going to close out this chapter of my career in LA, and I think it makes the most sense. But also, getting back to Bronny James, it's a business decision here. And you see teams go, okay, well, if they draft Bronny, he's going to stay with the Los Angeles Lakers. Well, nobody really cares outside of the lottery who those picks are. So when people say LeBron James' son can't be a first-round draft pick outside the lottery, nobody cares. Those picks are flipped left and right. You see second-round picks. Hey, we'll trade you. We'll just throw in 6 second-round picks here to try to bolster up this trade here. Outside of that, if LeBron James' son goes, let's just say, 20 to 30, whatever it is, that's fine. I can certainly live with that there. And if LeBron James says, I'll stay in LA if my son comes along, that's fine as well. It's not like the Lakers have the 3rd overall pick and it's going to be Bronny James and you wasted to keep LeBron James. See what I mean? So we're making a big to-do about nothing most of the time.
It's also not regarded as the best NBA draft. In fact, some are saying in the last 2 decades it might be the worst draft class we have seen. Now, quickly to Denver. The Nuggets continue their title defense into the second-round series, which is already set. It will be the 2-seed Denver versus the 3-seed Minnesota. Denver is a minus 215 series outright favorite. How competitive do you think this second-round series is going to be?
Yeah, it's going to be more than 5 games there. I love it. I think it's a great matchup here. I don't know what the tempo we're going to get out of these two teams will be in the next round, but I look at that Western Conference now. Once we get out of the first round, it feels like every single team has a legitimate chance to make a run towards that Western Conference championship.
All 4 wins for Denver in the 5 games in this opening round set. The total stayed under 217. Closing number last night stays under once again. The lone over was game 4. It was the only Laker win in the series. No wins for the Pels because of the OKC sweep. Next.
To the 2024 Stanley Cup odds, the Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stuart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I will take a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
DraftKings making a progressive move, I think, that most other companies are also going to do or have done in the past. Adding someone from the government or someone you would say in legislation to become their responsible gaming leader here. And in this case, her name is Lori Kalani.
And it'll be interesting to see if other companies try to follow suit in terms of hiring former lobbyists to head responsible gaming.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
4 games, 4 wins, series over. Oklahoma City dominant over the New Orleans Pelicans, who frankly, outside of the opening game of this opening round series, Donnie, looked rather lifeless, unable to take flight, if you will, even back in the Big Easy. It was competitive last night for the opening half in a low-scoring game. OKC up by just a few at the break. The Thunder pull away in the fourth quarter for an 8-point win, 97-89 in that 4-game sweep in the first playoff series victory for this Oklahoma City franchise since Kevin Durant was there, or maybe even after Kevin Durant was there, but it's been a long time since 2016. The Thunder win and cover as a 4.5-point road favorite in the Big Easy. Donnie, Oklahoma City has been one of the best cover teams all year long, the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. Now 38-27 against the number. Those 38 covers as the favored side this year, second most in the NBA, only behind the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, we like excitement in round number 1, at least to get our juices flowing here. And quite frankly, OKC was one of those teams that you might want to have from a vantage point and say, let's see how they handle themselves against the Pelicans. I probably can't be the only one out here, Ben, that didn't watch a single live minute of any one of these 4 games. And quite frankly, I didn't miss anything here. The New Orleans Pelicans come home, Ben. They don't even score 90 points in game 3 or game 4. I mean, what is the deal here? Like, we get upset and angry at the Orlando Magic and the Cleveland Cavaliers series, right? This game should have been on NBTV2, where it was an extra subscription with a plus sign here in order to get in and watch these games. You have to be a true NBA fan to log on and watch this nonsense that was taking place. Now, good for OKC, because sometimes, Ben, you need learning curves here. And good to get a dead team to handle them, to get the jitters out of the way, which we saw game number 1, I should say, with a 2-point victory. Games 2, 3, and 4 were easy wipeouts here for OKC over the Pelicans. That was just a dead team walking. Once it was apparent that Zion wasn't coming back, they didn't even show up in any game, including at home. At least put on a show for your fans and lose 131-121 at home. Not getting the 90 points at home, brick after brick after brick. Uninspiring is probably the best word I can use facing this series, particularly with the Pelicans.
The Thunder had a 1-point lead at the break. New Orleans had a 1-point lead entering the fourth and final quarter. Oklahoma City showed its might in the fourth quarter, winning by 9 for an 8-point victory margin overall. Again, covering as a 4.5-point favorite. Total was on the rise throughout Monday evening, stays well under 208. Neither team gets to the century mark. To Donnie's point, in all 4 losses for New Orleans, the most they scored was 92. That came back in game number 1. I love when my co-host admits to not watching a sporting event that we are tasked with discussing, either because of the start time or because of the lack of offensive basketball. But, hey, Donnie Wright's side is true to his core. But to his point, the Thunder win game number 2 by 32 points. They win game number 3 by 21 points. Ultimately, last night winning by 8 points. New Orleans really had 0 fight. But if you're looking at OKC, the number 1 overall seed, and let's give them their flowers for what they have done this year. Mark Daigneault, as we shared, wins Coach of the Year earlier over the weekend. In Oklahoma City, Donnie, we question, could this young core show up in the postseason, or would it take them some time to adjust? The learning curve was really in game number 1. They win that game outright, surviving a game-winning 3-point attempt from C.J. McCollum on the other side. They win all 4 games in this series, all 4 that we saw right away for a sweep. What did OKC show you, despite not watching, but just the overall assessment on how ready this Thunder team is to truly contend for that Western Conference crown?
That's what I just talked about here. When you take a look at OKC, sometimes you need a runway, Ben, before you can take off. We knew they were a really good basketball team throughout the regular season, but sometimes that doesn't translate over to the playoffs, where the game is different here. It turns into more of a half-court game. And you saw in game number 1, barely pulling out that victory, but still winning, saying, okay, the jitters are gone. The confidence is here. We took a 1-0 series lead. I loved what I saw the rest of the way. Games 2, handling your business in a blowout, going on the road in that first-time environment where you're going to face some opposition from the other team's home crowd. You won that game. game. Then a closeout situation, the first time to get your hands on that for a long time, saying, how are we going to handle ourselves here when most of our guys aren't used to being in this situation? And they closed out in style by handling the fourth quarter 27-18 in a close game entering the third and then closing out the fourth quarter. Loved what I saw here. No reason to believe they can't go out on a run. And sometimes you need a team like the Pelicans to give you a victory here and say, you know what? We're ready to go now.
We'll reset where the markets are. Denver's an odds-on favorite to win the West, as you saw, but OKC will have the rest advantage over either the Dallas Mavericks or the LA Clippers. More coming your way next.
To the 2024 Stanley Cup odds, the Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stuart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I will take a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
DraftKings making a progressive move, I think, that most other companies are also going to do or have done in the past. Adding someone from the government or someone you would say in legislation to become their responsible gaming leader here. And in this case, her name is Lori Kalani.
And it'll be interesting to see if other companies try to follow suit in terms of hiring former lobbyists to head responsible gaming.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid, we continue our NBA playoff conversation. 3 of the 4 teams that will reach the second round of the NBA's Western Conference postseason are already there. Minnesota Timberwolves first to do it on Sunday evening in the 4-game sweep over Phoenix. OKC, 4-game sweep over New Orleans. Denver, the gentleman's sweep in 5 games over the LA Lakers. We shared the Nuggets and the Timberwolves. It's the 2-3 matchup in the second round. The Nugs have home floor advantage at altitude, a -215 series outright favorite. Denver also in minus money. DRS to win the Western Conference title at -125. There is a substantial gap from where Denver is obviously in minus money to even where Oklahoma City is with the second best price at +360. OKC a full dollar in front of Minnesota at this moment at +460. And I will say this market is going to reshuffle again at the conclusion of the Mavericks and the Clippers series. That series tied at 2 games all. Game number 5 is actually tomorrow night back in Los Angeles. Still with questions around the health of Kawhi Leonard. You can see despite the Mavericks not having home floor advantage, they are expected to win this series outright over LA, both in the series price -186 and a shorter number to win the Western Conference title. But Donnie, when you look at those 2 teams behind Denver, already into the second round, OKC and Minnesota, value has to be on the Thunder, and they would have home floor advantage even over the Denver Nuggets in a Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, and apparently, again, it's just about that respect and what you've seen in the past, because now OKC is not going to really get any credit for, even though they swept their first-round opponent in the Pelicans, because that's what the pricing is coming up. The number one overall seed gets a sweep in round number 1 and will be healthy continuing to move forward. It's a plus 360 price behind the Denver Nuggets at 125. And also keep in mind on this, Minnesota Timberwolves are a really good basketball team here. And you still have the Denver Nuggets at a minus 125 price here to win the Western Conference, which means if Denver does beat Minnesota, it doesn't mean they win the Western Conference. Then they're probably going to have to face OKC, who is still going to be the home team over the Nuggets if they survive in round number 2 against the Mavericks and or the Clippers. So it's one of those price points that you look at. You're looking down the list. I like the Timberwolves at that plus 460 price. But again, they're going to have to beat the Denver Nuggets and then let's just say beat OKC on the road again after that. That's a tall tale here to sort of climb. But at that price point, 460, I'm willing to look into that. I'll tell you right now, even though we continually say the Denver Nuggets are the best team out west and will find themselves playing, let's just say, the Boston Celtics in the finals, I just don't like that price point at minus 125 to wrap up for still another couple weeks in order to get a payday. So you're looking for those plus money numbers. I like OKC, but again, not getting a lot of love and support for beating the Pelicans as if they were supposed to do that because they're always in the playoffs sweeping teams in rounds 1 and rounds 2 here. Not the case. But I do like the Timberwolves there at that plus 460 price. I'm not going to lie.
I think the Thunder have proven that they are very much the number 1 overall seed in the Western Conference. Of course, as you go deeper and deeper into the postseason, new tests continue to arise to try to prove that burden of expectation as well. But I think OKC has a huge advantage right now because the Clippers and the Mavericks, tied in a series of 2 games all, could very well go 7. OKC is going to have a huge rest advantage, home floor advantage over either the Clips or the Mavs. And if it is LA, Kawhi Leonard is not fully healthy at this point either. Keep an eye on Oklahoma City. I will be fascinated, Donnie, to see who ends up as the series outright favorite for that one and what exactly the numbers say. I think there was a thought that whoever won the Clippers and the Mavs series would probably beat Oklahoma City. I'm not so sure that happens. Now let's go out to the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. That's the Boston Celtics. And although Miami stunned everybody winning game number 2 in Beantown last week, that might be it. Boston responds by going to South Beach in both games 3 and 4 and wins by double digits. Last night winning by 14, 102-88. Boston closed as a 10.5-point road favorite in South Beach. They cover that number. Derek White, it was his game, a game-high 38 points. He hit 8 threes last night to lead all scorers, and Boston takes a very commanding 3-1 lead back to TD Garden, where they've been the best home team in the association all season long.
Yeah, this series was pretty much over when the Philadelphia 76ers took on the Miami Heat in that playing game and Jimmy Butler went down. It's like, oh, there was going to be a chance that the Miami Heat would give the Boston Celtics some issues, but certainly doesn't look like it at this point. And we were all stunned, including myself, in game number 2, where the Miami Heat in the TD Bank Garden handled their business and sent the series back 1-1 to Miami. But at the same time, did anybody flinch on their, hey, now, here come the Miami Heat, the zombie Heat, Eric Spoelstra, they can pull this off and win 3 more basketball games? Probably not, but also the ease that the Boston Celtics handled their business against the Miami Heat in Miami, which, again, not even bringing your A game yesterday, but the whole focal point on the Miami Heat is in the half-court game, they just don't have enough scorers here, and that's evidence yesterday. 88 total points in that game, which included 29 in the fourth quarter when the game was already out of reach. But if you're going to get support guys like Derek White to play 41 minutes, shoot 26 times, and knock down 8 triples, you're not going to beat anybody if you're the Miami Heat at that point. But it just gets back to the saying we had. If the Miami Heat have to do, hey, can they extend the series? Yeah, if they make 23 3-point shots in the Boston Garden once again, they can maybe extend that series. We all know that's not happening. The buck stops after game number 5. They got the Celtics' attention, and the Celtics certainly using that pulverizer right now on the Miami Heat.
Since making 23 threes, again, a franchise playoff best in game number 2. They were 23 of 43. Outlandish numbers. They were 9 of 33 last night. 9 of 28 in game number 3. Boston has either lost by double digits in this series, that happened once in game 2, or won by double digits. They've won by 20 in games 1 and 3, 14 last night in game number 4. The Seas have been booked as at least a 9.5-point favorite in all 4 games. They have covered in all 3 of their wins, all 3 Boston victories. The total has stayed under as well. Pre-game number actually up by a point right before tip last night in Miami, 204 and a hook. We did not even get close. Although I will say, with some good is some bad, and Kristaps Porzingis exited after only 14 minutes played last night with a calf injury. Not sure Boston needs him for game number 5 of this series back in Beantown later this week. But does it change anything in your mind, DRS, overall for the Celtics, who are booked as the favorite to win the NBA Finals at plus 135?
Oh, absolutely. Porzingis has been a really good player this year for Boston. It was one of those where they acquired him. It's like, oh, I wonder how he fits in. Fit in perfectly here. There was no animosity like, oh, Tatum and Brown can't play together. Now you're going to add Porzingis to the equation. He fits in where he gets in here as that third option scorer that if he is open from three-point land, he can make that shot. If you need him to get double-digit rebounds, he can get that. This is one to keep an eye on. Now, not necessarily moving forward where if you say, okay, Porzingis is going to be down 4 or 5 games, then he's going to be fine and come back. I don't see it as a big deal. But if this is one of those, he gets an MRI and it's a grade 2 tear and it's 3 to 4 weeks at that point where, keep in mind, when you get a calf injury, it's not like, hey, I hurt my wrist. Okay, cool. Run up and down the court, run a couple miles, get your cardio going. How are we doing cardio here with a bad calf injury? He would even have ramp-up time after that. And also, he's not a guard, Ben, 165 pounds. He's a big guy out there that's going to put a lot of stress on that calf muscle. Something to keep an eye on. Short term, I don't think there's any issues. But if it is a long-term one, losing Porzingis, that's pretty big.
The Celtics, a 13.5-point favorite for game number 5, looking for the series clincher tomorrow night back inside TD Garden. Can they cover as a 2-touchdown favorite? That remains to be seen. For Boston to win in 5 is minus 1,200. That's the money line price for the game and in the series odds as well. That's a Caleb Williams price to make another football comparison at minus 100,000 to win the series outright, the same number that Caleb Williams was to be the first overall pick to Chicago in the 2024 NFL Draft. We'll have the big picture conversation for the Lakers next.
To the 2024 Stanley Cup odds, the Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stuart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I would say a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
DraftKings making a progressive move, I think, that most other companies are also going to do or have done in the past. Adding someone from the government or someone you would say in legislation to become their responsible gaming leader here. And in this case, her name is Lori Kalani.
And it'll be interesting to see if other companies try to follow suit in terms of hiring former lobbyists to head responsible gaming.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
A sports talk debate dream. The season is over for LeBron James and the Lakers, and now we try to forecast the future. What is next in LA? What is next for LeBron? Will the marriage between the two continue? Is LeBron James going elsewhere? Is Bronny following? Could this be it after 21 NBA seasons? All of those questions, Donnie, do not have an answer here in the very early stages of the offseason now in the city of Angels and for LeBron James. He was asked quickly about his future in the association and in Los Angeles last night after the Game 5 loss, the series-ending loss for LA to Denver. And LeBron said, took a pause for a couple of seconds and said, I'm not going to answer that. So I ask you, Donnie, because LeBron did not answer, what do you think is next for LeBron James and the Lakers?
He's staying in Los Angeles and will apply pressure to the Lakers to make sure they draft him, and they will do that. And also, when you take a look at, the whole Buss legacy, right, starting with Dr. Jerry Buss, I mean, he was fantastic in the 1980s, keeping core players together before the salary cap, making sure the Lakers were that superstar brand in basketball, regardless of what their record was. Now, having said that, under Dr. Jerry Buss in the 80s and early 90s, they always had a good record with Magic Johnson and the boys out there running that fast pace with Pat Riley. I get that. But also, when you turned it over to Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal, they eventually dealt Shaquille O'Neal to the Miami Heat, which, again, made some sense for them because they said, he's going to be aging here soon. We're really going to focus on guard play of Kobe Bryant, and it worked out in spades because Kobe was an absolute superstar. But hear me out on this. As Kobe started to get older in age, he was still a box office draw, and that's a big part of what the Los Angeles Lakers actually are. So I used to get a kick out of Kobe Bryant holding the Lakers hostage by going I don't care what the salary cap is. You will give me the most amount of money you can, even if it means it's going to hurt this team. But I'm star power and people will watch. And it worked out. The arena sold out. They're getting national highlights, even if the Lakers really weren't perennial, even playoff contenders at this point. So that's why I bring up LeBron James now. He's still box office power in the NBA, and the Lakers need superstars. What's going to work for the Lakers? Hey, LeBron, we're not going to draft your son here to keep you, even though you probably have another 2 really good seasons left on your, legs at this point. We're not going to do that, and we'll move you or you'll move on, and we'll see what we can do at that point. I don't think that's going to happen. So for me, the best spot for LeBron James is the Lakers. Also, Ben, keep in mind this. Let's bring up Shaquille O'Neal again. Do you remember, he ended his career in, Boston and Cleveland and Phoenix here? LeBron James doesn't need to say, I'm going to opt out of my contract, go play for the Boston Celtics, be a 5th man or a 6th guy coming off the bench to pick up a championship. The one thing that we do know when you add to legacy, okay, how many rings does he have? People are well, yeah, he went to Boston here. It was one of the last part of his career and sort of cheated the salary cap because he has so much money already and just tried to get an extra 2 rings to catch Michael Jordan. Stay in Los Angeles. Your legacy is now with the Lakers. Stay there and see what you can do.
It's actually kind of funny because LeBron James just completed his 6th NBA season in LA, more than he did in Miami, 4 years with the Heat, of course, 11 seasons with the Cleveland Cavaliers. LeBron James, still at the age of 39, in year number 21, played 71 games. Maybe part of that is the new minimum set in place in the NBA for all pro teams and postseason acknowledgments for what you do in the NBA regular season. But 71 games, averaged better than 35 minutes per game, still nearly averaged 26 points per game, better than 8 dimes, more than 7 rebounds. He's not slowing down, at least in terms of production. We have never seen anything like this. You cannot make a comparison to the longevity and the performance even in 2 decades plus of an NBA career for the 20-time NBA All-Star, which is just crazy to say, and the 4-time NBA MVP. Now, as we look at the Lakers overall, there is already the conversations and the reports that the Lakers will do everything in their might. They will move heaven and earth to keep LeBron in LA. that includes looking to draft Bronny James. We'll have that conversation in just we'll have that conversation right now, I guess. Again, we'll get back to that because I do want to make the point about Los Angeles here for just a moment in comparison to what the expectation was entering this season. Now, it's already been said that Darvin Ham, the head coach for the Lakers, is more than likely on his way out. Some of his tactics holding back this team. But they did go over their preseason win total, 47 wins. They won 11 of their final 14 down the home stretch of the regular season to be in the 7-8 play-in game. They knock off New Orleans. They earn the 7th seed. Just unfortunately, they draw the reigning NBA champs in the Denver Nuggets, a team that has had their number the past 2 NBA seasons. But they entered this year tied for the third best price to win the West. They fall short of that expectation. If LeBron James returns to Los Angeles, that expectation, though, still remains entering next season, correct?
Yes, it does. And also, Ben, you have to keep in mind, like, what we're getting. This isn't the Lakers like, oh, my goodness, Ben. Number 2 overall seed in the West. Boy, they underperformed in round number 1. This seems like a perennial play-in team right now. And I think one of your points that we brought up in some of these numbers, Anthony Davis is nicknamed Street Clothes, not because he likes to buy clothes and he plays 82 games a season. It's that he misses usually more games, it feels like, exactly, than he actually plays at this point. And LeBron James, at close to 40 years old, Ben, played 71 games this year. Let's go back to their norms, right, as they get older. Anthony Davis misses 30 games next year, and LeBron James tweaks his calf and only plays, let's just say, 55 games. Do the Lakers even make the playoffs at this point? That's what we have to look for moving forward. It's not as if you continually are the number 1 seed and getting upset in the Western Conference Finals, or let's just say round number 2 or even round number 1. This is a team that barely sneaks into the playoffs now, it feels like. So what do we have in store for the future, even if they do keep Anthony Davis and LeBron James on their team?
And part of it is LeBron's longstanding desire to play in an NBA game with his son, Bronny. Now, Bronny James, after 1 year at USC, entered the 2024 NBA draft, still retaining his college eligibility if the prospects for the association are not great. And according to our guy, Shams Charania of FanDuel TV and The Athletic, the Lakers are open and willing to draft Bronny to keep LeBron in L.A. As you shared, Donnie, it wouldn't be a lottery pick. They could get Bronny James and maneuver things around. And if you keep LeBron James, it's the best pick you could have in the 2024 NBA draft. Now we go to Major League Baseball on the other side of the break here on the Early Line.
To the 2024 Stanley Cup odds, the Hurricanes remain the favorite, followed by the Panthers and the Rangers. Interesting that they all are coming from the similar side of the bracket.
While the Oilers have the top-end talent, I still don't think they have enough depth, and Stuart Skinner does not scare me in depth. So I will take a long series from the Oilers and the Kings, and ultimately I think the Stars are the ones coming out of the West for the Stanley Cup.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
DraftKings making a progressive move, I think, that most other companies are also going to do or have done in the past. Adding someone from the government or someone you would say in legislation to become their responsible gaming leader here. And in this case, her name is Lori Kalani.
And it'll be interesting to see if other companies try to follow suit in terms of hiring former lobbyists to head responsible gaming.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Game Time had 35 in the first half, Cam. And then, of course, he did not have another point the rest of the game.
Lillard's, it's playoff game time. This guy will show up. He will hit shots. Indiana, you better respond here because I'll tell you, that's a bad, bad, bad loss. We were wrong, Carver. Like, hey, I admit I was on the Pelicans. This game, I lost.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Some Major League Baseball talk around the Daily Diamond Dash right here on this Tuesday morning on the early line on SportsGrid. 12-game slate yesterday to start off a new week in MLB. Biggest game, biggest series potentially in the midweek to begin things here, really into the second month of this Major League Baseball season. The Yankees and the Orioles in the American League East. Two teams we expect to contend for the top spot in the division, maybe the number one overall seed in the American League when all is said and done. Yesterday in Camden Yards for the first game of this midweek set, and the Orioles shut out the Yanks. They blanked the Pinstripes 2-0 yesterday in Baltimore. Grayson Rodriguez, sensational on the bump for Baltimore, and the young Gunnar Henderson, and I mean young, 22 years old, leads off the game for the O's in the home half of the first with his 10th home run of the season. The youngest player at 22 years old, DRS, in Major League Baseball history to hit 10 home runs before May 1st. He does so at the tender age of 22. He turns 23 at the end of June.
Yeah, this team is really good. 1 through 9, that is a fun team. You got some veteran presence in there, but also a lot of really good young talent. And one of those pitchers that we've talked about, at least over the past, let's just say 12 to 24 months, is Rodriguez. He improves to 4-1, Ben, but he hasn't actually been on point technically this year. Now, yesterday, he goes 5 2/3 innings, 5 hits, no earned runs, lowers his ERA to 3.71. If you're getting pitching performances out of the younger guys like this, and I'm not talking about, hey, Ben, he was really good against Kansas City last night. These are the games that you measure up toe-to-toe that even if you're a young pitcher and do well, you save these things for later in the season because you know what? When the Yankees and the Orioles battle in September, maybe in the playoffs, you can reach back and say, remember that night I dominated them at home? And also, it wasn't 42 degrees with the wind blowing in and rain that I was great. It was 80 degrees with the wind blowing out, and I was sensational against that Yankees team. So now you take a look at both of these teams, 18-10 for the Orioles, 19-11 for the Yankees here. Loved what I saw of the Orioles, and also keep in mind, the Yankees did have chances last night. 0 for 8 with runners in scoring position, just couldn't cash in. And you might say to yourself, like, well, that's going to happen on a night-to-night basis. Yeah, that usually gets you beat, let's just say, 6-1 at that point. That was a 1-0 game until the bottom of the 8th inning until you had an error there. So you come through with 1 or 2 base hits with runners in scoring position, the Yankees would have won that baseball game. So I love the way the Orioles won. It wasn't let's just outslug the Yankees here 10-9 and see what happens. A 2-0 victory at home, that sets the pace. A great victory for Rodriguez on the mound. I liked what I saw last night.
Baltimore 0 of 5 with runners in scoring position. It's not like they generated a ton of offense either. They do get the win. Total was 9 on a warm night in Camden. Stays well under. Baltimore was a slight home favorite, minus 130 on the money line. So the Orioles now 18-10. Win percentage of .643. The Yankees 19-11 overall. Win percentage of .633. So technically Baltimore a slightly better record, but New York remains the odds-on favorite in the American League East. Also the two best prices, DRS, to win the American League pennant at this moment. The Yankees, the favorites, plus 290. Just $2, a little bit over $2 behind is Baltimore. Do you consider these two teams at this current moment the two best in the AL?
I do. I do look at it that way. And also, you're playing in a pretty tough division, so you're going to keep those knives sharp throughout the entire summer. And I don't think anybody's going to run away with this division. So you get an Atlanta Braves effect. Like, hey, last 3 weeks of the season, there's no pressure on us. Then you show up in the playoffs dead to rights because you weren't used to that competition. But also keep in mind with the Yankees, some of their big-time players still going to be on the way, like a Garrett Cole that might be able to dominate if he gets back and is truly healthy for the entirety of the summer. So that's something to keep an eye on. But I'll keep the same energy I had yesterday. Give me the plus money with the Orioles now, and that does include the American League market. You have a plus 290 on the Yankees, which, again, they're going to be favorites here. That Yankee tax always appears, and also they're a good ball club here. But the Baltimore is at a 5-1 price. I'd rather have the 5-1 price than the plus 290 price right now. I'll trust the Orioles early in the season, and I'll take that bigger plus money.
It's kind of like the conversation we have with Oklahoma City and maybe Minnesota, but mainly OKC. Number 1 seed in their first postseason, really together as a core. Can this group perform? It was the same thing we asked last year for Baltimore. Number 1 seed in the American League postseason bracket. Could they perform? No, they lost in their opening round set, I believe, against the Rangers. And Texas, of course, the World Series champs when all was said and done. We'll go elsewhere around the American League and the AL East. Justin Turner, the new Toronto Blue Jay, having himself a great first season up in the Great White North, and a big Monday for a win for the Jays over the Royals. Plenty of MLB conversation comes your way as we start off hour number 2 live right here on the Early Line. Join us after the break in just over 2 minutes.